A little bit about Protera. We started in 1998. We're a global IT outsourcing firm. We focused primarily in the first 5 years around professional services, around the basis stack in SAP. And over those last 15 years, we've been focusing upon the migrations and the managed services, including hosting for SAP customers. And we started early on in 2011 when SAP got certified for AWS. We actually helped with those efforts to put SAP processing into the AWS cloud. So we're very proficient, very familiar with cloud technologies, especially around AWS. We've been focusing on that for as long as cloud's been around. We actually had demo systems running as early as 2008 that were focused around the cloud. So our focus here, our mission is to deliver the best forward-thinking ITO services platform for companies. And as you'll see in the next couple slides here, our focus is basically the full stack management for SAP customers. And we provide that through our 24/7 help desk we call AppCare. And that service portfolio, as you're going to see, covers not just SAP, but all the other technologies that touch SAP. So we can even do the management down to the desktop for customers. So you'll see with our AppCare services, it's the full stack, which includes the application and the cloud hosting, and then all the monitoring, change management, incident resolution, the backup, the DR, HA setup, the patch management, all this we fully cover. And should mention that it's not just the operational part, but we also focus upon the migrations, obviously, as well as the design, the implementation, and making sure operations is set up properly. And then later in the presentation here, we're going to talk about a new product that we just released at Sapphire this year called Protera FlexBridge. And this is focused upon cloud migrations, especially for HANA. So excited to share that information with you. We're really happy with the power it's providing our customers to take advantage of cloud and do this in a very fast and easy migration. And I also will mention that we are going for our global certification. We are one of the few companies that have in the United States 5 certifications. We're looking to extend that to a global certification, and we're doing that right now with SAP. It's going to be completed by the end of January. So we're looking forward to have that global cert, which considers our operations around the world. And then lastly, talk about our differentiators. And that includes what we call being a cloud broker. We take a lot of pride in our focus around customer service is around the idea that we can integrate all these different technologies. So a customer doesn't have to know about all the new technologies available in cloud and in SAP. We are always staying ahead of the pack of where the technology is going, and staying, trained in the latest technology, as well as keeping in step with SAP's roadmap, as well as the other cloud providers, especially at AWS. So excited to show some of those areas that we've been focusing on the last few years here. So I mentioned our ITO services platform. So we focus upon all the good areas that the cloud now brings us, and you can see these 5 proficiencies, you could say, that cloud brings to the table. We build this into our platform to provide this for our customers. So you can see, again, we're involved in design, but also into the implementation and deployment phase of operations. So in all areas, we're proficient, and we have a lot of experience with taking customers live, as well as taking complex migrations and moving that compute into the cloud and keeping the customer up and all the systems fully integrated during that time. So we have many years of experience doing this for many large companies with their full suite of platform, as you'll see in this slide. So when we talk about our AppCare platform, you can think of the seamless app integration and the delivery for it. So you can see here on the bottom, we can integrate a customer's on-premise data center as well as Protera's data centers, and integrate that into the new services provided by the cloud companies. And you can see on the top here, the companies that we work with. This idea of being a cloud broker is that we can take any of those technologies from the cloud, and we can standardize those into our processes to bring you best of class services. So with all of our services, we have an SLA for the availability of our systems, as well as the performance of those for all the full stack. So it's not just running SAP, but making sure the backups are running at high availability and high enough success rate, as well as making sure the HA is architected properly. So all this is wrapped into AppCare, and you can see in the middle all these pieces that make this. So it's not just the cloud technologies and using what's built into those cloud, but also taking our best practices and including the SAP's best practices into our solution. So it's taking this idea of the best of what cloud and SAP provides and touching all the way to the customer and their solutions. You can see here on the right side, we have the edge technology we utilize, and this can take the cloud and extend it into those customer locations for managing, the web filtering, intrusion detection, all these other services that are best handled on premise for a customer. We can fully manage those as well with our solutions. So a good example is, antivirus and having file servers locally and printing. That's all possible with our technology, with our edge servers. And then on the left side, we can see all the stack of SAP, and we can talk about associated technologies. So these are just some of them here. So integrating Active Directory throughout the cloud. So your on-premise systems can be used for using the Active Directory for on-premise authentication, and we can extend that to systems that are in the cloud so there's a single sign-on. So extending all those capabilities of Active Directory, as well as the Office 365 suite of tools. So that's SharePoint and Yammer and email with Exchange. We fully support those and integrate those to your solutions. And I'll also mention, the full OSDB support, especially around SUSE, which as we'll talk with the HANA migrations is a key part, integral part of running the SAP system is that integration with SUSE. And we have a longstanding partnership and very involved with SUSE with their technology roadmap to make sure that we're staying on top of where SUSE is going for the HANA technology. So this is a good slide, came from reInvent last week. It shows a good picture of how a company can work with a cloud provider with AWS. And here you can see from the left where you have a customer where they will be directly involved and they'll have their own cloud services. And then there's the middle piece where you have the SAP partner, where they will rely upon a partner to provide the SAP hosting. We're proud to say, and we're happy to say that we are in the third bracket where we will fully manage the SAP system as well as the infrastructure which AWS provides. So it's the integration not only of the SAP areas, making sure your backup jobs are running properly, performance tuning is properly done, make sure things are sized properly, but also looking at how that changes in the cloud model. So making sure that HA and disaster recovery is architected properly, making sure that we have, we're taking advantage of all the cost savings the cloud provides with reserved instances and looking at right sizing. Maybe we can bring the non-prod systems down when they're not in use, or we're tightly tied in with Amazon's roadmap and their current technology, what's available, and we're always integrating that and bringing those innovations to our customers for cost savings and for enhanced feature set. So it's a key differentiator, being integrated with the cloud with AWS and being able to provide that with all of our customers. So we'll start looking here at running AWS for SAP. There was a lot of announcements last week, and we have those reflected in these slides. So it's good to revisit them because we have some new capabilities available as of last week. This is a nice slide that summarizes all of the SAP platforms that are now currently available on AWS, and it's quite striking. Pretty much the full suite's now available in the cloud for AWS. And you can see most recent announcement came about a month ago where now Oracle is supported as a database. That comes with the requirement that you're running Oracle Linux on AWS. Yet it's a significant improvement, so it provides that functionality and support. But you can see for the solutions, of course, we have HANA. We have the mobile platform as well as the Business Suite. Recently announced last quarter was BW for HANA, as well as S4 last year. And then the Business Suite, which includes SRM, CRM, SCM, as well as ECC. So we got those Wissmann systems, as well as all the NetWeaver, the portal system, all those business warehouse, and then the other systems, business all-in-one, business objects. So almost a full suite of SAP solutions are now fully supported in AWS. And I'll also highlight, we also have the Windows operating system and database, as well as we can see here SUSE Linux fully supported for the HANA systems. as well as Windows servers. Some announcements that came out last week was to extend the family of instances that are supported for HANA, and yet they haven't been certified yet. It's certainly going to be done soon. We don't have the sizing yet on the SAPS ratings for the R4 family. And this is a sampling. I think the R4 family now has 5 instances. We can see here over, there was a spot in between the 244, which was the first HANA instance that was certified by SAP. AWS then certified a 2 terabyte instance. And then shortly thereafter, a few months ago, they certified a 1 terabyte. And then at reInvent, they just gave us a half terabyte, a 488 gig system. So it's a nice sweet spot because a lot of production systems will fit into this instance, and you can right size that system to use that that footprint. So in addition to the 488 gig, we also have the R4 8X large, which provides us 244. So it's the same size, but it's an advanced chipset, uses the advanced Intel chipset, as well as faster networking capabilities. I believe it's 20 gigabit. The slide still shows 10 here, but it's 20 gigabits, so it's actually advanced networking also for enhanced throughput on the HANA device. So good capabilities, enhanced options for putting the largest workloads of HANA into AWS and running them with more truer fit. So when the HANA system outgrows 488 gigs, you can now move up to 976 and right size it for its life cycle in the system and how it's used. So some very exciting announcements. This note that's referenced here will have that new information for AWS instances, and keep an eye on that because it's some additional family that's smaller sizes. They have a 122 also and a few other sizes. So in addition to that, the announcements with the new R4 family is to recircle back and look at how we can run the scale out. So of course we have scale up, which is available now with 2 terabytes as of Sapphire this year, and then 1 terabyte from a few months ago, so we can do 1 terabyte. And then you can see going to the right, the scale out, which is available for the OLAP systems, those analytical systems. It's not currently available for OLTP or the Business Suite. So the scale out can take your BW systems and put them out to the largest sizes. Right now, the maximum is 14 terabyte scale out if you use the X1 32X large platform. So quite a large system that you can support in BW. Obviously, we'll be getting more scale up in the future, and I'll continue to build these out. So let's look at some typical use cases here for AWS for SAP. Got some good examples and how it ties in with what we're seeing with our demand from our customers. So obviously, we're seeing a lot of pent-up demand for moving companies to HANA as well as going to cloud. So with our SAP existing customers, we see a lot of interest in moving to HANA. And at that time, when we look at HANA, might as well look at if HANA is running in the right platform. So all the advantages of looking at cloud, which we looked at in that previous slide, we can bring to bear. And it looks, a lot of interest and a lot of ideas on how migrations can occur. We're going to show some of what we think is the best approach in the next few slides coming up. But the existing use case here we're talking about is the migration in whole. Now, how you get there to dip your foot in the pool, you could say, to test out if you can put your company's SAP system in AWS as a hybrid architecture. So this would be moving dev and quality first to AWS and testing that out. And this was actually SAP, our biggest involvement with the certification was around this area to test out the hybrid architecture. So we actually used our cloud systems that we integrated to AWS in 2011, and we tested out all those scenarios. So testing out to make sure that printing could work over a hybrid environment, change management where you had a dev and quality into the cloud, and then you had production still on premise. So we did a lot of testing around that, and it works extremely well. One of the biggest questions that comes up around here is around how the systems are architected around networking. And we'll see here in a few slides around the standard architectures that AWS recommends, how we would architect that and some considerations there. but certainly works, and it's a good place that we can test a customer and make them feel more comfortable that this is a good approach for putting production into the cloud. And you can see that the trial, the training, the POC systems. So these are all maybe short-term life systems where you can put them into the cloud, do a test. And those are perfect scenarios here to move compute in the cloud. The area that we actually started working with AWS for our SAP customers was around DR, and that's the next point. And it's a perfect fit because we can architect a solution which we call the pilot light, where we can keep that target system small, at a small size, until you actually want to do a test or until you have to declare an emergency and declare DR. So we can keep, let's say a production system is sized at, just for example's sake, it's got a 200 gig of RAM and it runs, 100 processors, just for example's sake, over all the instances. All we have to do in DR is to replicate that database, and the file systems keep it in sync. And so in that target system, we can keep a very small system, even down to a couple VPUs and let's say 16 gigs of RAM, just to keep the database replicated. And then when we want to do a test, we would actually quiesce the logs, and then we would actually copy that target pilot light system and create the test system on that. And then we would launch that copy with a fully sized cloud architecture for that. So the customer's only paying that production footprint when they do a test, or obviously when DR is declared. But it's really nice because it's not only the cost efficiencies, but to create a copy is within hours. It's very easy to do. It's within the standard tools that AWS provides with snapshots. And also it allows you to do multiple copies while you still have your pilot light. So you still have your DR fully available, fully synchronized, and you can do DR testing all at the same time. So it's a great benefit. It's a good way to test DR, and also to test your put your foot in the pool with AWS and cloud. And then lastly, we'll talk about the on-demand infrastructure for these upgrades and to do migration. So this is an area that we're focusing a lot upon with our migration product and services to do proof of concepts. And we can take a copy of an ECC system and we can migrate that over to cloud and to HANA within a few hours. So we can do proof of concepts, and customers can test their data in a HANA system on the cloud, and do that with a trial license. So it's very minimal involvement from the customer in time and as well as money to test their systems out on HANA in the cloud. And lastly, same idea around SAP new customers. So we can do a company that's testing out SAP for new license, and they're looking at other competing products. They can actually test out a system that's pre-configured. They probably won't want to spend a lot of time doing an implementation of SAP, but they can test out a test system just to see how it worked for their environment, and they could try out the new version of HANA. So along with that, we looked at the previous slide about how Protera fits in with this ecosystem. Some customers are going to be very sophisticated and advanced in SAP, and they can manage SAP in the cloud. Even for those companies, I think we've seen a lot of interest and benefits for using Protera services, because we can bring the expertise and our efficiencies for running not only SAP, but running SAP in the cloud over these years. So that's where we come in with our services. So SAP migrations, full migrations AWS, not only just SAP. There's a lot of pent-up demand for moving a full data center over to AWS. So that is certainly an area of interest, as well as moving the SAP footprint. So that's where we get involved with the SAP HANA migration. And the key part we'll see here in the next few slides is when we do this migration to HANA, we do all the transformation of the operating system, the database, the SAP version going to HANA, as well as moving to cloud in just one hop. So we don't have to do multiple sets of tests. There isn't multiple projects, which could be multiple years. This is all done in one step. So we think it's a big advantage to be able to tackle doing the HANA upgrade at the same time and moving to cloud. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And then another thing we'll talk about is this cloud readiness, this assessment. So part of our services we'll provide customers for free is we'll do an assessment to move them to HANA Cloud on AWS. And we'll assess how ready they are for the HANA upgrade and any remediation steps that have to be done from a technical aspect. So looking at the possible use cases here for SAP, this is a good chart that compares, as it says, customers of all sizes. So we look at a full migration, what things would have to be considered. Right now, it's important to note that first column, Windows and Linux, that's fully supported in AWS. For Unix customers, we would do a migration off Unix, and we would put them, our preference would be on SUSE Linux, which would be a comparable and better platform. With those asterisks, that OS migration is required. And with that, with FlexBridge, we can provide, as I said, the OS and DB migration at the same time. So it supports the Unix platforms. We actually can even migrate off the mainframe, going directly to HANA on AWS Cloud. So all these are important considerations if we're going to move the full SAP stack, or if we're going to do DR. We have to consider that source system and how it's going to integrate with the OS that are provided and supported for AWS support. All right, so we'll look at, as I mentioned, some of these best practices and recommendations for putting SAP in the cloud. So one of the big strengths about AWS is this marketplace that provides the vendor solutions in the AWS cloud. So it's very quick where you can configure a system and build a HANA system, to SAP standards. So we have this SAP HANA virtual appliance delivery, where you can build it and you can select the size of system as you saw on that previous slide, with the best fit for that SAP customer. So we have the 2 terabyte option down to 244 that's fully certified. So you can look at the best fit for the HANA system. Then we have there's a lot of information in this chart here. We have recommendations on the EBS volumes, which is the storage. So within HANA, it's recommended to have the solid state drives for performance. And then also looking at how backups are going to be done. So there's standards. You can certainly do backups to the EBS volumes as well as to S3, so we can get that data off that region, off that that zone, and we can spread out to other data centers. And then obviously, if we're connecting this system into the cloud to on-premise, we are going to have to secure that over a network. So the standards here to quickly provision that VPC, that's the virtual private cloud, and all the security behind it can be done with the CloudFormation tool sets that AWS provides. So some very good standards, some very good security processes built in to this process to build systems in AWS. And we certainly recommend and take advantage of all those standards and features. And lastly, it's important that as we talk about systems that we move in, if it's a hybrid environment, if it's non-prod, there's 2 classes of ways you can run your instances in AWS. We would recommend that you keep them on demand, so you pay by the hour when you use them, and we'll make sure that the systems are sized properly. Once those systems are sized properly, and we ensure that we want to keep these systems up 100% of the time if it's production, or maybe it's a quality system that we certainly want to do a lot of testing on, we would then look at converting those on-demand instances to a reserved instance, and that provides further cost savings if the usage of that system warrants it. So it's something that we certainly help the customers to take a look at for cost savings. This slide's a very nice overview of all the options within HA and DR. So there's within native ECC, within native AWS, we have the EC2 auto recovery. And you see that with number 1 as an option. This provides, it's not application HA. It would be when that instance would go down for some reason, it would actually automatically restart that instance on another physical server. So if there's a physical host failure or a networking failure, it would restart that on another box. And this is all built in standard pricing from AWS, no advanced features. So you can certainly take advantage of that day 1. Day 2 is looking at more advanced features where we can have a replication with the standby HANA system. So this HANA capability is built in within SAP's HA software, and we would certainly recommend to couple that with SUSE's HA capabilities with the enterprise software that's developed specific for SAP applications. So it provides an even higher level guarantee of SLA for HA. And then we have these other options here where you can look at backup and recovery. So for example, you could take a backup, a warm backup with all the logs. So you do full database backups and then transactional log backups of the HANA system. And you would put that to S3. So it's a lower cost option. Instead of having HA, where you have a standby system, you can make the backups, and those systems are going to be cross region. So this gets into a DR where we can keep that system backups in another data center and use those in case of a failure where this original system was destroyed or there's a logical error and we had to restore the system. We could pull that back from another data center and restore the system. So that's a nice low-cost way to provide DR. Because right now in HANA, you'd actually have a dedicated system for DR. So it's a lower-cost option there, but the time to get the system back obviously is going to be a little more time involved in having a dedicated system there for recovery. So the last part here with the 4 and 5 is looking at using S3, replicating those over regions. So you'd have those systems in another region where you could bring those up. So lots of options, and we have experts just in this area that we can do a specific one-on-one meeting to architect your solution more in detail. But it's a nice slide overviewing many options here, and many of them are available with just the standard tools, no additional cost in AWS. So talking about the standard SAP deployment architecture, as I mentioned before, when we look at hybrid cloud, one of the first things that we focus upon is how we're going to connect those systems to that customer environment. So what we would recommend, obviously, and it's a requirement for SAP certification to SAP fully support those systems, is to have a dedicated virtual private cloud for these SAP systems, and we would route that through at minimum a VPN. So you look here at this diagram, we're going through a gateway. We would only allow the ports that are used by SAP to go back to the customer site, and then we would secure those within its own subnet. So we would have a range that only allows traffic into these specific systems. So that's fully recommended. If a customer tests this out, going through a hybrid, they would put a non-production system in here. Once they would start moving more systems, we would highly recommend that the customer goes to a direct connect method for networking. We can use VPN even for DR if there's not a lot of traffic going over there, but the direct connect method provides us an SLA with guaranteed bandwidth, and it also provides us MPLS functionality where you can have multiple points connect to the site. So it's a much better architecture and a resilient method of connecting. So we talked a little bit about how we architect the systems through the EBS volumes we mentioned. For HANA, we recommend SSDs. You also see here with the DR. So in this example, you have the DR system replicated. We could keep it smaller where it's sized, at a fraction of what production is doing this method of doing a pilot light. And then also we see this capability outside the region where we could ship these logs. So again, standard AWS technologies, no additional pricing or technologies needed to provide this advanced features of DR here and even HA. So a little more on the HA discussion in DR. We have a scenario here shown where we have the replication of the systems where you have the EBS volumes, and you can see this EC2 auto recovery, which I mentioned previously. This will automatically bring the system up, and this again is no additional cost to bring the HANA system up on another instance. We can also extend that idea to the DR site. So the DR site would be fully set up with this HA option. So that site also is built-in auto recovery. So it's another region. You can notice the production system is in the east, and we have west running for the DR site with the pilot light as well as the auto recovery setup. We'll focus here on how we get all this SAP compute into the cloud and our options around that. So in the past, in all of our current SAP deployments, we look at new implementations, which you could see, if we take the course up on the top where you do a new deployment, you look at cloud, you'd move upgrade SAP, you keep it in your own data center, and then you would move that system, copy the backups, and move that to cloud. You put it on tape. This is an iterative process that's going to take many months, if not years, to these multiple projects. That is certainly one option to move to cloud. Then the other option, which we propose, is looking at this bottom path. So you have your SAP system. It might be running on mainframe, might be Unix, might be Windows or Linux, and looking at whatever that source system is. We look at doing an OSD migration. So this path in the bottom, we see advantages not only over the implementation, but even over the lift and shift, which the lift and shift is basically moving bytes by byte. So you may have an operating system, a database that's fully supported by Amazon, and you can do that byte by byte replication, which takes a tremendous amount of time, as well as you're not getting any new feature benefit. You're basically moving everything that you have current version over to cloud, and then you would have to do the upgrades later. This idea that we're proposing takes advantage of the time that used for the migration and the testing, as well as getting you the new version for HANA and the SAP version on top of that, as well as the cloud features. So we'll go through now how we accomplish that. So this is introducing our product called Protera FlexBridge. And as I mentioned, it's a one-step HANA migration for the operating system, the database, HANA, so it'd be the SAP upgrade also, doing Unicode conversion if your customer system requires that still, and also moving it to cloud. And how we do that, it's not just a tool set or methodology, it's a combination of the services that we've been doing for 20 years on cloud migration, moving systems, compute into cloud, but also bringing to bear our best practices and SAP's best practices and how you should do a migration. So looking at all those recommended approaches for the choice, how you run the migration, the sizing, the processes, all the parameters that are done for the SAP tool sets you use for migration, as well as the best practices of looking at the remediation steps before you do a project. So looking at if we do archiving at a time or compression to try to speed up and minimize the downtime for the customer. So a lot of considerations of how we're going to do the migration. So what we've done is we packaged our best practices and the ideas into a tool set, a software package we built called Protera FlexBridge. And this tool set utilizes SAP's certified tools to do the migration. So it's an automated platform that we use for the migrations. And what it takes advantage of is to do an early assessment of the customer environment to see what has to be remediated. You're going to see that shortly. I'll give you a quick overview of what the assessment includes. And then in addition to the assessment and the preparations for the migration, it actually performs the migration. So we have a dedicated team of FlexBridge experts, these migration experts that are going to work on your customer environment, and they'll do the full performance of the migration. So they will work with the customer, stamp the project plan, stamp the approach. So if we're going to do the development system first, and then we do a copy of production multiple times, and then we do production, we'll work with the customer's project management and leadership, the IT leadership, to come up with the plan and execute that. And the tool set has not only automation of the migrations built into it, but also a vast knowledge base. So whenever there's problems, this problem is stored in the system. And so when another customer, a different migration hits that same problem, we can recommend and automate a fix for it. So the mean time to resolution gets improved. So it's a combination of technologies and approach and best practices that are built into the software that provides this one-step migration option. So to start this off, we have this assessment, and we provide this free of charge today. You can quickly get this in 4 steps, and we have it right on our website. You can go to Protera.com. There's FlexBridge Migrations. Click on that, and you can register at our site. And with that, we'll provide you either the source code or a transport where you can quickly run a report, essentially, and it's going to extract, it's a read-only report that's extract vital information from your source system. So it's going to look at the systems that you want to move to HANA, into AWS. It's going to send this output file. It's an XML, which is a text file. Customer can see not only the source code, but what's output. And the customer will see that there's no customer-specific sensitive data in there. It's just the vitals of system sizing, versions of software, in some configuration that's vital for the HANA migration. From this XML output, we automatically create an assessment report. So we do that, and we schedule a call with the customer and go through that. So it overviews the approach in areas of consideration. So in this report, you can see we have the executive summary, gives a very high-level view of the migration, reasons why a company wants to go to cloud and HANA, and it then gives the timeline and a high-level cost of what's going to be to involve, to do the migration to cloud. Then it also is going to report for the customer systems what is the source system. So it gives any of the remediation items that are needed for that source system to migrate. It's going to go through those in detail. And then it goes through the migration overview in whole. So the flexible methodology, the best practice we adhere to, it gives a good overview of that. And then we propose a solution there. So what's going to look like in AWS, the sizing, the timeline, that'll all be shown in the proposed solution. And then we have an overview of Protera and FlexBridge. Those are associated PowerPoints that we put in the presentation. Excuse me. And then lastly, we have an appendix, just a good primer so a customer can see the benefits of cloud and specifically around AWS. So some of the terminology and language that's good to understand when you look at AWS. So the architecture makes sense and looking at the components of cloud, how AWS does it. So it's a standalone report. It's a good, good primer of not only how to get to HANA, but also how we run SAP on the cloud. So it's encourage all customers to take a look at it, and we can walk you through it. So lastly, most importantly, let's talk about what's worked already and what's been extremely successful for our customers. As I mentioned, we've been doing AWS for a long time. We have production companies running since 2011 in AWS, and very happy to continue that with some new wins. And some of those are here. You can see Fitch Ratings is currently migrating their business suite. They're going to HANA on SUSE on AWS. So we have ERP as well as Business Objects and Solman, and that's in process right now. We also have a company that we just took management AMS services over for on Gulfmark very recently, and we've been able to save Gulfmark a tremendous amount of spend, with their management for SAP as well as the infrastructure and how that's managed. There's a case study that's coming out very soon on that, but very exciting story on Gulfmark. And then also with Pacific Drilling, it's a newer customer that we signed recently. They're going to HANA, managed services with Protera AppCare. Again, that's HANA, SUSE with AWS. Some customers that we signed recently include also ArcLight. It's a movie studio, theaters, which is on the West Coast. They were notable because they went live in 16 weeks on S/4HANA, and they were a net new SAP customer. So that's a very exciting implementation, new S4 on AWS. For our candy companies, another exciting implementation. They went live with Business Objects in HANA. They have on-premise ECC, and they're looking to actually migrate the rest of their systems into AWS. So they've seen success with the hybrid approach, having the analytics running in the cloud, and looking to move more systems in the cloud now. And then we also have MB Coatings, and this is our very first FlexBridge production customer. They actually did their migration with traditional methods before, and we saw tremendous improvements with the process of introducing FlexBridge for the migration. So they went from Windows Oracle, they migrated to ECC on HANA, so Business Suite on HANA, and that POC was complete on AWS in 1 week. So very, very exciting improvement for their migration. And then up comes Merrifield, which is actually our very first production SAP system in AWS. And you can see on YouTube, there's a case study on that video. It goes back to, I think, 2011, 2012, where they went live. Been fully managed hosting since that time. And AWS is a perfect fit for their business, as a lot of their business is seasonal, being a garden center, so they can take advantage of the scale up and the elasticity of AWS Cloud. So it talks about that in that video. It's very exciting information. And then we have Midwest Tape, and very interesting company. They've been a big embrace of technology in the cloud. They have their ERP system. They have DR on AWS, and they also have, they've embraced AWS technology quite a bit with their technology for libraries to stream movies on the cloud from AWS. So they've been on the forefront of technology in AWS adopting that. We've been using AWS Cloud for their DR for many years, and they continually do testing every year, and it's much easier than how they had DR before to set up and test it. And with below, we have their test and dev systems are managed and fully managed, run in the cloud. They have Windows SQL, and they run those for other trade shows from the AWS Cloud there. And then lastly on this slide, we have Harvey, which is set up for DR. This is Linux DB2. And then our very first DR system that we set up within the cloud was this case. And what's really interesting about this is their system was on 3.1i. So not only was it, it's a testament to how well the AWS DR works for architecture, because the system doesn't even have built-in database DR setup as a capability for replication in that version. So we were able to build a solution on top of the AWS Cloud that made it simple to replicate the logs as well as the file systems on an older version of SAP and the operating system. So it's quite exciting that we could do it, for an older version of SAP, just to show how bulletproof the SAP running on AWS truly is. So with that, I think we have a lot of reference customers for a lot of different scenarios. The hybrid integration, as you saw with Ferrara, with Bob J, connecting back to their on-premise ECC. We have a lot of DR scenarios that we've shown, as well as production systems starting with Merrifield back in 2011. And then we have a lot of big implementations, including HANA migrations going on right now to AWS. So some very exciting references. I encourage you to talk to us if you have any questions about those. And also furthermore about taking advantage of our opportunity here with doing an assessment, going to cloud with HANA. So happy to answer any questions on those, get you set up with a free assessment. You can look through your customer environment in whole or any prospects, customers, to look at their systems to do a migration, and happy to answer those questions. So feel free to reach out to us on our website, contact us for any more details on the information here, and happy to help with your journey to the cloud with AWS. Thanks so much.